This is a Hurricane Milton update for Tuesday, October the 8th. It's approximately 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Michael Groff. Thank you for joining me. Milton has rapidly intensified as was expected over the last 24 hours. It is now a Category 5. Maximum sustained winds 165 miles per hour, battering the northern portion of the Yucatan Peninsula with hurricane-force winds and very heavy rain. And we saw the central pressure briefly drop under 900 millibars earlier this afternoon. And even though now the central pressure is at 901 millibars, this is still a dangerous, life-threatening hurricane. And we're going to get you all the latest, the data here, the advisories. We'll take a look at modeling as we dive on in and talk about it. All right, now here's the satellite presentation. Again, still very well-defined eye. It has had this interaction with the northern portion of the Yucatan, and so the winds have dropped off a little bit. They were up at 180 miles per hour earlier today. But regardless, this is still an absolutely devastating hurricane with 165 mile per hour winds. Latest from the National Hurricane Center, there it is. And the forecast, the overall thinking on this has not changed very much. With the track of this storm having shifted pretty much back toward Tampa Bay. And the latest advisory, the official forecast track is just, and I mean maybe 10 miles south of the previous position in terms of the forecast track, the overall thinking here. So we've got hurricane warnings for much of west central Florida, and that includes Tampa Bay. And this is expected to make landfall on Wednesday evening, sometime around 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the current thinking anyway, as a Category 3 hurricane. Now, this should undergo at least some shear and some drier air intrusion, and that will help to weaken this a little bit. But, you know, the word weaken is somewhat of a misnomer here. Yes, it will not be a Category 5. At least it does not appear that it will be at the time of landfall, but that does not mean you should let your guard down or take this lightly. This is still looking like it will be a significant storm, a life-threatening storm for much of the Florida Peninsula, and this is all going to unfold over the next 48 hours or so. All right, let's show you some of the modeling on this. We'll start with the intensity guidance. And the worst case scenario here, we do have a couple of models that want to keep this at Category 5 strength all the way up until the point of landfall. That would obviously be not only the worst case scenario, but just devastating for Tampa Bay down to Sarasota, Venice. Those areas would be absolutely slammed by a Category 5. In fact, really, even north of there, and points eastward all through the central portion of the Florida Peninsula, Lakeland, Orlando, all the way down to Daytona Beach and Melbourne and all the inland areas. Everybody would be absolutely crushed by a Category 5 hurricane. Many of the models, though, bring it back down to about a Category 3. That's the official Hurricane Center prediction as well at the time of landfall. But we're going to keep you up to date on this. We're going to keep monitoring this very carefully. This storm has already thrown us a couple of surprises in terms of its rapid intensification. And so it could hold together at Category 5 intensity, but we'll see. The tropical model set, this is the ATCF set. Where is this going? And remember, we had kind of a split camp in the tropical models. Some brought it a little further south, some brought it a little further north. Almost all of them now have it pretty much going right into west central Florida, in and around Tampa Bay, a little bit north or a little bit south. Obviously, the exact point of landfall is somewhat important here because that will determine storm surge. Now, we anticipate, regardless of where it goes, even if it pivots a little further south, storm surge will still be a major issue, and lowland flooding and inundation will be a major issue for Tampa Bay. Just how bad it is remains to be seen, but right now the official thinking is around 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. We'll show you that graphic in a moment. But this is the tropical model set. Very good agreement. The GFS ensemble, pretty good agreement as well. You got a few members that, take it a little further north or south, but for the most part, the ensemble mean, which is how you want to forecast these things, the ensemble mean takes it pretty close to Tampa Bay. All right, this is the storm surge forecast, again, from the National Hurricane Center. 10 to 15 feet of storm surge for Tampa Bay. I understand that the evacuation orders have come out and that, many people are going to heed those, but if you don't, I don't know how you survive a 15-foot storm surge. And again, we don't say that to scare anybody or alarm anybody. This is not clickbait. This is not, this is not here for engagement. 15 feet of storm surge, you do not survive that. So if you are in an evacuation zone, please heed that evacuation order. Now, if you're inland, the other concerns, heavy rain, flooding from heavy rain, obviously the winds, we're looking at wind gusts well over 120, 130, 140 miles per hour, especially with that eye wall along and just south of the circulation center. And then, of course, the threat of isolated tornadoes. But storm surge, that's going to be the big one here. And again, 10 to 15 foot storm surge. And even down further to the south, down toward Inglewood, 6 to 10 feet. Charlotte Harbor, 6 to 10 feet. Even down toward Fort Myers, we could see 4 to 7 feet of storm surge. All the way down toward the Keys, we could see 1 to 3 feet. And then on the Florida East Coast, as this makes its way across, we're going to see some storm surge even over there. Won't be quite as bad, but 2 to 4 feet. Again, nothing to take lightly. And even up on toward the Nature Coast and those areas that were hit hard by Helene. And the problem here is that there are roads that are washed out still from Helene. There are still infrastructure issues and damage to the infrastructure from Helene. There are people that are still without power from Helene. And so, unfortunately, another storm following so close behind that, that's going to make it much more difficult. And luckily, there are many people that have heeded the evacuation orders and some that have just decided, even inland, that they're going to head north and they're going to get out of the way of this storm. And that's probably a really good call. Because even if it does not turn out to be a Category 5, even if it weakens even more substantially, better to be safe than sorry. But obviously you have your own risk tolerance level. Everybody does. And so you do what you think is best. But I'll tell you, I would be getting out of the way. All right, let's look at rainfall. Rainfall, this is courtesy of the WPC. Now, technically, this forecast goes out until late Monday night of next week, but almost all of this is going to be from Helene or rain that's occurring just before, with Milton or just before the onset of Milton. All right, so you've got rain amounts anywhere from 6 to 10 inches, really, for the central part of the Florida Peninsula, from Tampa Bay to Orlando, and over there toward Flagler County, Volusia County. Yeah, we could see anywhere from 6 to 10 inches of rain, really up that I-4 corridor. Even places like Lakeland, probably 4 or 5 inches of rain. Now that doesn't sound like that much, relatively speaking. We saw more than that with Helene last week, and especially in the mountains of North Carolina, North Georgia. Some spots saw 30, 40 inches of rain. This system is moving faster. Obviously, we're not going to see that. But still, on top of the rain that we've been getting for the last couple of days across central Florida, the ground is already saturated. So any more rain, and then with wind, that's going to mean a lot more down trees. I think there'll be more down trees with this system than there were with Helene. So Milton is going to take down a lot of trees and power lines, and that's why we're so concerned about this system, because even if it was a minimal hurricane, we'd be very concerned about the tree and power line situation and the damage from all of that because of the already saturated ground. So another reason to be concerned about this, and there will be probably widespread power outages, and it could take days, if not weeks, to restore power in some locations. Again, obviously, In the aftermath of Helene, we still have power outages throughout much of North Florida and points north from there. So the rainfall on top of that. All right, let's take you through some modeling here. Let's look at this, see what's going on. All right, this is the GFS. We'll start with that, the 18Z run. And this is 2 a.m. Thursday morning. And at that point, the GFS has Milton making landfall right around Tampa Bay. And again, this is obviously the worst case scenario. And the GFS is now, which was kind of it's been the stronger solution, but it was much further north, now has come toward Tampa Bay. And if that happens, yeah, we'd probably see that maximized storm surge up around 15 feet. We'd obviously see the strongest winds in Tampa Bay, much of Hillsborough County, and obviously in St. Pete, of course. Southern Pinellas County. You'd be getting the worst of this. And the flooding, the lowland flooding, the inundation from storm surge, the very heavy rain, and that the winds, 130, 140 miles an hour. I mean, if this verifies, this would probably be a Category 4 at the point of landfall, or at the time of landfall. But the system's moving quickly enough that within about 12 hours, it is exiting the east coast of Florida. But this would bring hurricane force winds all through the central portion of the peninsula, tropical storm force winds through most of the peninsula. There's a good possibility you'd see tropical storm force winds all the way from Jacksonville south to West Palm Beach. Because keep in mind, as this system approaches, it will be undergoing shear. We do expect it to be weakening, but what that means is as the system weakens, the wind fields fan out. The system expands. The cloud shield expands. So you'd be getting a wider swath of winds, maybe not quite as intense as they would have been at Category 5, but more locations are going to be seeing those tropical storm force and hurricane force winds. All right, let's go to the European. Again, this is at 5 a.m. Thursday morning. The European's a bit slower in bringing this in, and at that point, the landfall again is pretty close to Tampa Bay. European's very strong as well. In fact, European has got this pretty close to a upper end Category 4 at the point of landfall based on pressure. And that would obviously not be good either. And just like the GFS, it moves it fairly quickly across the Florida Peninsula. And by 2 o'clock Thursday afternoon, it's exiting pretty close to Melbourne. Now let's look at the European AI model. And this is the model that has performed very well this season. We've been talking about this. This one is a little weaker with the storm system and has Milton somewhere around a Category 2. Again, based on pressure. But regardless, Category 2 or 3 or 4, just take your precautions as if it were a Category 5. That's what you need to do. And I think that's the best way to approach this. Focusing in on exactly the intensity of the wind and all of that, that's kind of a fool's game here at this point. What we really want to focus on is making sure everybody is safe and aware of where this is headed. And if you are along and south of the track, because with a system coming in from the southwest, it's along and south of the track here, the path, that's where the worst of this is going to be, with the strongest winds, the heaviest rain, the possibility for some isolated tornadoes, and the worst storm surge, the onshore side of this, the positive vorticity side of this storm. So the European AI is just ever so slightly further south, but not by much. I mean, the models are coming into very good agreement now. And that is unfortunately just the nightmare scenario for Tampa Bay. All right, now, why do we expect this to weaken? Let me show you this. This is our precipitable water product here. This shows you sort of the moisture through the atmospheric column. And you can see to the north of this system, one of the things that's directing this system to the northeast and pulling it up towards central Florida is a surface boundary that sits here. It's not much of a cold front. I've heard a lot of people call it a cold front. It's more of a surface boundary, a divider between drier continental air and this moist tropical air. And this drier air is going to start to get entrenched into the circulation of Milton. And that should at least mitigate its strength somewhat. So this is on Wednesday afternoon. And let's look at the upper level winds as well. And you can see there's some shear going on here. Westerlies are dipping to the south. And so as a result, we do anticipate some weakening, although how much remains to be seen. But any amount of weakening that we can get out of this, anything to bring down the maximum winds of this would help out. But again, as it weakens, the tropical storm force winds are going to fan out quite a bit. So you'll have a longer duration of sustained winds across a good portion of the Florida Peninsula. And we can't emphasize that enough. So let's look at rainfall. This is coming off of the short range ensemble forecast. This is for Tampa Bay, Tampa. And the ensemble means about 4 inches. You got the control member closer to 6 inches. In Orlando, again, it's pretty much the same, 4 inches. The control member closer to 8 inches. Either way, some pretty heavy rain, but not devastating rain. The rainfall, yes, will be significant and could lead to local flooding, but it's the storm surge and the wind and the isolated tornadoes are the bigger threat from this hurricane. So to reset where we're at right now, all right, Milton, a dangerous Category 5 hurricane sitting on the just north of the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula as of 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, October the 8th. It is moving east at 9 miles per hour. The pressure is 901 millibars. Top winds, maximum sustained winds, 165 miles per hour. We still anticipate that curve more toward the northeast. This should remain as a Category 5 for at least the next 12 to 18 hours. Perhaps we'll see some weakening with this system as it approaches the west coast of Florida, but that doesn't mean you take it lightly, and that doesn't mean much because it is still, at least according to the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center, anticipated to be a Category 3 at the time of landfall. And landfall should occur sometime Wednesday evening between about 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. At least that's how the official forecast is looking right now. That'll be adjusted, I'm sure, as we get closer. But that's how things stand at present. Heed your evacuation orders. If you are inland and you're planning to ride this thing out, make sure you have plenty of food, water. If you have a generator, great. You're probably going to need it. You'll likely be without power for a matter of days, maybe weeks. Again, infrastructure already damaged from Helene. So Milton really picked a heck of a time to come on through Central Florida. All right, that's where we stand right now. We'll get you another update on Milton on tomorrow morning's Phoenix, Arizona weather discussion that we do on this channel as well. And then we'll have another Milton update sometime tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow evening. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoy these videos, be sure to subscribe, like, share, click that notification bell so that whenever a brand new video is posted, you'll get the notices. Your comments, questions, and suggestions always encouraged as well. If you really like what we do here, click that thanks icon below the video here on YouTube and make those monetary contributions to us, or you can donate directly to me via PayPal. Grovshow@gmail.com is that PayPal address. It's GROFFshow@gmail.com for PayPal. The executive producer of the Phoenix, Arizona weather discussion and our Hurricane Milton updates is my one and only, sweetest of all time, Asian sensation and proprietor of SweetChildAZ.com.org and the Facebook page of the same name, Sweet Child Arizona, talking about my Michelle. Check her out. Check out everything Michelle related linked up down in the description, and our streaming station and all of our stuff is linked up down below. PayPal and all that too. Thank you once again so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. Be safe and have yourselves a great rest of your overnight. And we'll see you back here later on this morning or tomorrow morning, depending on what time zone you're in. Let's just call it Tuesday morning here for the Phoenix, Arizona weather discussion. Good night, everybody.